Let's go to Finance Committee. Chair Norton. Chair Norton's just getting her computer fired up, and then we're going to Finance. Nope.
The Finance Committee had just one actionable item for the board to consider today. That is Agenda Item 4.7, Special Education Intensive Service Fund Amendments. The motion before the board today is that the board approves R277-752, Special Education Intensive Services Fund, Draft 1, on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. Discussion to that motion?
The motion passed 3-2 in finance, if that adds any additional information.
It's helpful. Member Bogus.
Chair, I would just ask if perhaps Superintendent Jones could clarify for the public what's happening in this rule change.
Deputy Jones, would you mind addressing, we have before us Rule 752, the special education carry forward balance restrictions. And again, we're looking at lines 99 to 101. The language in 102 to 104 had been previously accepted. That goes into effect June 30th, 2026. I think the new language just clarifies what's in place prior to that, but that's the question, Deputy Jones, if you could clarify what's the intent of 99 to 101. Got him. Oh, our mics all went to the small mic system.
So, Chair, if you'll, Deputy Superintendent of Operations Scott Jones, Utah State Board of Education. Ben, can you clarify or answer the Chair's question?
Can I take the mic?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So the special intensive, the primary body of the rule that was the Special Education Intensive Services Fund, my understanding is that's no longer, that's been done away with. And so the bulk of the rule is no longer necessary. The only thing that would remain in the rule is a carry forward limitation for general special education funds that was traditionally part of the rule, and that's in the very last part of the rule. That's what would remain. We would rename the rule just so that it deals with that limited issue.
Okay, thank you. And that was legislative action that you referred to that took that out, right? Member
Right.
Davis?
Yes.
Or Deputy Jones, did you have, or should I go to Member Davis's?
No, I just saying yes, Chair, that's legislative.
And do you also want to clarify why there's language in here, I think, that said that this just applies to USDB?
Yeah. I don't think that was,
34.
34, 35.
yeah.
So that merely is because in R277-100, we define LEA we have a definition for LEA, but generally if a rule is going to apply to USDB as well, we call that out in the rule that says they also are bound by this rule like all the other LEAs. So this applies to all LEAs and USDB.
Okay, Member Davis?
Okay, well, this was just brought to my attention by Vice Chair Earl a minute ago, who someone had suggested, and Vice Chair Earl, you could help me, because I don't know what you know, but had said, is there a reason that we have to give the 20% back to the Uniform School Fund? Could we use it to help offset some of these problems we have this year with USDB and potentially coming up?
I can answer that question.
Deputy Jones?
Okay. So, well, it's either Captain or Tennille. So anyway, yes, we could do that. However, whatever we do, Chair, to Board Member Davis's question would be, the legislature would have to repurpose that money during the session, right?
Right.
I mean, technically, USDB chair could, pay it, out of their own budget, but then we would get it we'd get the legislature, or request that the legislature repurpose that money to be sent to us and then basically reimburse USDB. So,
Would there-
the short answer is yes.
Okay, Chairman, if I may follow up, would there be wisdom in postponing this to Finance Committee to tomorrow morning to discuss this with our already agendized item in this space? So we can,
Chair?
Yes.
See if it's
I
an option.
recognize, to answer Board Member Davis' question, I would recommend that the board do not postpone it, because it's okay. I mean, if you move forward, what we're discussing in other agenda items tomorrow relates to that, and could be, I believe, if I understand why she's asking this question, could be addressed and covered there as well. I don't see any reason why you should hold this up any longer, so.
quick follow-up. So if this passes today, then we could essentially undo the request for where the money would go tomorrow. And then it would come back in full board. Would we lose the money in the meantime, in the month, in the meantime?
No, because it would have to, you wouldn't lose the money because we wouldn't go back, Chair. We wouldn't go back. No, you wouldn't lose the money because either way, not trying to be presumptive of how things will go tomorrow, we would control for the ability to meet the rule, the requirements, and then also the intent behind the rule, for USDB too. I don't see a risk of that happening.
thank you.
So, yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Vice Chair Earl?
Okay, so I'm trying to think through this. What we're asking for is to fund current and our employees for next year. Is it wise, is this prudent that you fund them with possible extra funding from the year before? Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's like, I don't think you can do that. I think you have to have a set understanding that you're going to have that funding. You can't say, well, we're hoping that someone goes over the 20% or the 10% so that we have money to fund USDB, because it's going to accumulate over time, right? So I don't think we can use that funding for that, other than a stopgap if we needed to do a temporary assistance with special ed funding. But to rely on that would be relying on something we can't guarantee is always going to be there.
Yeah, so Chair, if I may,
Okay,
I'm not
so-
sure that Board Member Davis was suggesting
I'm-
that, but could we check with her to just, okay.
Yeah, let's get some clarity.
Yeah,
For
through
board
you,
members,
Chair,
a lot
through
of
you.
moving pieces here, especially applies to
Right.
USDB, some employee questions. So could you just frame it up? Yeah, what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that
Okay.
this would in any way be an ongoing solution to our problem. We need to
Got
look
it.
at something structurally there, but I do think we could ask the legislature one time to help repurpose some of this to meet some of the needs that we have, because we're up against this kind of wall right now for this school year.
No.
And for next school year,
Yeah.
this school year with one LEA and
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
next school
Sorry.
year with FTEs.
Okay, I can see that. That
Yeah.
would be, I can see that, sorry.
My only thing that I think we should discuss in Finance Committee tomorrow.
So it's a one-time stopgap
Yes.
versus the, okay.
Yeah.
Deputy Jones?
So basically, under the, Chair, if I may, under the Budgetary Procedures Act, no agency could hire without having the funds in place to do it. So I think that's part of the consideration here, is that we would enable appropriately and allowably USDB to take action but we would still need legislative,
Take action by what?
but,
do-
well,
to do
whatever's
what?
decided tomorrow with the funding from,
To fill in for employees, if you could just, and I've been part of
Okay.
these discussions, but even then I get lost.
well,
The proposal would be as a stopgap measure to possibly do what?
Yeah.
My understanding would be, for an LEA, we have an LEA that's dropped below the 5%. They are paying for part of it this year. They're asking that be covered. Am I understanding? Is that what you're going to say? Maybe.
I'll just, yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, this, if we postpone it, but it is to the motion to postpone
Yeah.
for this purposes of
Chair,
USDB.
in order to honor procedures, right, we are off the main agenda point now and leading into tomorrow with thing. I can assure you that either way, we can meet this. I can't be presumptive and say that the, Finance Committee will recommend this but I can assure Board Member Davis that there's really no risk here as long as everybody acknowledges the fact that once you decide, it will still take legislative action to realign the funds. This piece that we're talking about is something we'll discuss further tomorrow. So on a different agenda item, different rule type thing, if I may, so.
Yeah, okay, so
Yeah.
what's germane to our purpose here is the
Okay.
question of Rule 99 to 101,
Yep,
which is proposed to be passed by the board, which says superintendent shall recoup any carry forward balance in excess of 20% and return the funds to the uniform school fund. That's the language, and so I don't know if there was an amendment. There are questions about whether there's a possibility to redirect that toward, I think, any school that has dropped below 3% of students who are deaf and blind, and therefore has now taken on the responsibility to fund the services for those students.
right.
And one or more LEAs have sought help for that. Question then whether some of this carry forward funding could be a stopgap as that district transitions below the 3% line into handling it themselves. Could some of that be taken on with this money? So
Yeah.
as it relates to the money, to the motion before us, again, if we pass this and says return the funds to the uniform school fund, was there a formal amendment proposed? Just a question of clarity? And I guess the question becomes, does that possibility of perhaps getting legislative approval to redirect those funds for that stopgap help for the LEA, does that have anything to do with what we do on lines 99 to 101? Trying to make this germane, and I think
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
I-
Deputy Jones, what's the?
Well, so given this discussion on this, here's what I would recommend you do, is take the reference out of the uniforms to the uniform school fund. So that in itself is just what the money actually does is return to our balances, right? And so by virtue of that fact, I would recommend you just we're not disregarding the piece on the uniform school fund, but you just state that the superintendent shall, recoup that money that will return, and that money shall return to the USBE balances for future use as determined by the board.
So moved.
Or, no, by the
By the legislature.
Sorry, I'm sorry, by
By
the
the legislature.
legislature. Yeah, sorry.
That's been moved by Carol,
Yeah,
Member
legislature,
Lear.
not board, yeah.
Got it, okay. I think Member Laird, did you adopt that and make the motion? No? Was it Member Davis? I thought somebody said so moved. I'm sorry, I just heard it wrong. Okay, so there is a motion accepting what Deputy Jones just said, which would replace the uniform school fund to USBE balance for, I don't know if anybody caught the language. Well, I think the point is it would bring it back rather than to the school fund, to our balance, which if the legislature so chose, they could sweep. But if they chose otherwise, we could then have it here for use in other purposes. I think that's the idea. Where do you park it? Instead of the general fund, we park it here and then we wait to see what the legislature does, right? Okay. Did we get that language up there? Super. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we're not. Maybe we are. You tell me, Deputy Jones, what gives us the flexibility subject to the legislative direction?
Yeah, we do recommend that you do distinguish or delineate that it clearly goes into the USB balances, but it's
So
up to
can
the
you just give us
legislature.
direction on the language
Oh,
specifically there, and then we can.
Ben has that.
Then we can see if it's been moved, seconded, and deliberate. To superintendent, is there something, USB balance or language to that effect that we need in there?
That meets the need because it's basically saying that
Okay. For our ops
No, no,
folks,
no, no.
does that meet the intent, or do we need more clarifying
As
language?
determined by the legislature. As, I guess, maybe requested by the board and determined by the legislature. Does that make sense? So we recoup it, it goes into our balances, but then we get legislative permission to
As,
use it in the way that you want it
so
used.
requested by the board and determined by the legislature?
Some background.
Yeah.
Seem to work?
Yeah. Chair, I think it's a value add, and we'll be quick about this. I think the board needs a little bit more background on this, and Deborah's best qualified to do that.
Let me just make sure we got the language up here. I think we got it right, and then let's see if it's been seconded, and then we can discuss. So the proposal would be to change from Uniform School Fund to Superintendent for future use as requested by the board, strike the word through, I believe, and determined by the legislature. We got an extra clunky word in there. Requested by the board and determined by the legislature? Does that look right? I capture the intent. Is that moved then? Member Davis, you were initially moving on that. Is that language up there what you intend to move? Okay, I see a yes. Can you just give me a yes on the record? I want to make sure we're not.
Yes,
Or
I'll give
so
you
moved.
a yes. I mean, I have a protest vote on this for entirely different reasons, so I'm complicating my own life here, my own internal conflict, but yes, that is.
That capture, okay, do we have a second then to the language that's up on the board?
Chair?
Yes,
Yeah, just point of clarification. I don't know if I can do that as staff, but point of clarification.
sure.
Clarify for
I'll,
him,
I'll
please.
accept the point of clarity.
Okay.
Deborah Jacobson, Assistant Superintendent of Operations for the board. I just wanted to give you some background on this particular funding. This funding actually is part of the MSP Basic program, and the board has very limited authority over this funding. The board has the authority to actually use it to solve WPU issues, voted in board balances, and then there's one other thing that I'm forgetting. Anyway, it's very limited. So the balances typically will stay here, and the legislature will use it to solve greater problems in the system as a whole when needed. So if we want to do anything else with this funding, it would have to be a request to the legislature to use it for another purpose.
Got it, okay. Was there a second to Member Davis's motion then? Member Norton seconds? Okay. Further discussion? Thank you for that clarification, Deputy. Did we? Sorry, Deputy Jacobson, thank you. I think we got the language right. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we can vote on Member Davis's motion to amend. I don't think I'm missing any lights. Member Klein?
Abstain.
Member Klein abstains. Got four more. Four more. We got Member Klein abstained. And one more, Vice Chair Earl. I thought I pushed it. All right. Okay, that passes 14 in favor, one abstention, Member Klein. Thank you. And so we have now the underlying motion, which is that we approve R277-752, Special Education Intensive Services Fund, Draft 1 as amended, with Member Davis's amendment, on first reading and on second and final reading. Correct? Okay. So we're voting on the underlying motion as just amended by Member Davis's motion. Please vote. Member Klein?
Abstain.
Okay. We haven't enforced that, but I can. All right, voting is live. And one more.
I know, I have no fingerprint or something.
Too soft. All right, that passes 14 in affirmative and Member Klein abstaining. Thank you. That takes us back to Chair Norton, I believe.
And that concludes finance summary.
Thank you, Chair Norton. So